can you just kind of run down what
Sure.
this year's AI Hackathon is about?
The hackathon is a place for people who've never touched AI tools but want to learn about them and start to use them. It's a place for people who feel they're like mid to advanced users that want to go and see what else, how other people are using it. And what we do is we put all of these people on these blended teams of like new people, seasoned people with the captains, other marketers, and the captains are really lovely this year. What's cool about it is most of the captains are either returning from last year or people like yourself who are participants last year.
Welcome back to this latest episode of the Dealership Fixit. I am Jacob Berry, and I'm your host today. And today's guest, I'm super excited about. We got a mastermind of marketing. His name is Brent Wees. And today we're going to talk a little bit about Brent. He's a keynote speaker. He's a mastermind, fractional CMO, a strategist, and more importantly, he is the builder of the AI Hackathon. Now, the one that we're going to talk about today is going to be happening in October. It's going to be at the Digital Dealer Conference at the MGM Grand on the 8th from 1 to 4 p.m. But before we get into all that, Brent, I just wanted to say hi to you and kind of start with a little bit of your journey into where we're at now as becoming a mastermind of marketing. So glad to have you on.
Yeah, thanks, man. A mastermind of marketing, man. I barely get through a day without getting in my own way, but that's very kind of you to say that. I'll start with when I actually went back to school, and it started a long time ago. I was always in a creative industry in one way or the other. So first career, I was a classically trained music theater actor performer. So trained in singing, acting, and dance. So all of those silos of being a professional actor and a music theater actor. Did a lot of television and film, did voiceover work, sang backup jingles on radio spots. So, some of that brings you into the advertising realm. And in my mid-20s, which is a completely different story, but I moved myself out of that by design and not by design. And in sort of refinding what I wanted to do in my path, I went back to school for design and development. I really was the internet was becoming, more of a thing. The dot-com boom was happening, and I was really interested in. So I'm really aging myself here, but the dot-com boom was happening. There was a lot of interesting things going on. There was a lot of programs in schools that were adding all of this interactive design, coding, all of that stuff that was happening. So I went back to school because I wanted to continue doing something that I felt was pushing the creative side of my head. And through that, coming out of school, I came right out into the dot-com bust, which was fantastic. So you go to school to go, do this internet thing, and the agencies in Toronto were like building up all these big departments. And the bust happened, and they got rid of everything again, right? Because this was going to be a fad. And thinking how I could almost from the fact that I'm a fractional CMO now, I actually started as a fractional collective of designers and coders. I grabbed friends that were all around the same age, all either coming out of school or had gone back to school. And I built a collective of people that the agencies could fractionally hire in. So it's funny that what I do now, because it's come full circle, because that's how I started. Because there wasn't a lot of full-time work, I created work by creating a fractional agency that would do spot work for these agencies, digitally building websites, creating 3D graphics, cartoon illustrations. Like I had people that I could kind of pick from and pull. And through that work, I met Barry Hillier, who was my first, serious business partner. Barry had left the agency Saatchi & Saatchi, global advertising agency. And he was starting a company called Dashboard, which was going to be a digitally focused ad agency. And everyone thought he was nuts because, again, this was going to be a fad. And I started doing some spot work. My first design partner, Tulen Ma, and I started doing some work for him and brought in some of our people. And then we merged things. And the next 16, 17 years were a lot of really cool projects. We were doing a lot of global tier one work with Wrigley's gum, like Juicy Fruit, Excel, and doing things for like Hellmann's mayonnaise and Axe body spray, like all these Unilever brands and Wrigley brands and Johnson & Johnson brands, financial brands, rebranding companies. So, doing some fiscal rebranding and working with athletes for their web environments like Wayne Gretzky. So we did a lot of really, really cool stuff. And that brought us to a place where eventually in your agency world, you're always like, the big contracts you're always looking for, like a beer, entertainment, automotive, right? So automotive, we started to work for the Ontario Toyota Dealers Association in a digital aspect. They gave us a couple of projects here and there just to test our chops. And then when they finally allowed us to pitch the business, for a long, long time, we were just their digital agency of record. They still had like a Saatchi and Saatchi or a global agency to do print and radio and TV and all the big brand stuff. But anything digitally, we were in control of. And where that evolved was that we took the agency acumen of how do we get a campaign or a website or something digital together, a parts and service campaign, you name it, and how do we put that into a product? Because the dealers were asking us, hey, our association, our tier 2 website was great. Toyota was asking us, like we were doing a showroom tracker for Toyota Canada, early on, these little apps and different things. Then the dealers approached us. I think it was Amin Tajani from Don Valley North Toyota. Is like, how do we get that into our own website environment? So that's when we built our first CMS. So a dealer website portal was our first sort of toe dip into software development, SaaS-based, product.
What year was that?
Oh, geez.
Must have been the
man, oh,
early
man.
2000s.
It was because we had some of the things that we were, because this was at the time there was no OEM programs, especially Toyota. Toyota was like, we're not doing OEM programs. We're going to be agnostic. Here are our guidelines, regardless of what vendor you use. Just follow these guidelines, and you'll get your co-op, and you'll get all your junk. Like we had Toyota dealers that were on with us for like over 10 years. So when we sold in 2016, so let's say we rolled this out maybe 2003, 2004, maybe. Like Barry will probably watch this. So Barry, like if you see Jacob's post, like, when did we start it? It was so long ago, but it was the early 2000s when we built the first version of it. And we exited in 2016. And from there, we started working with Nissan, we worked with Lexus, right? Like we started to peel off Nissan and Toyota, Lexus, Infiniti were sort of our main pieces. But then, that's really what drove us into the automotive world. But when we exited in 2016, we actually had like kind of shut down most of the agency work because we were a boutique agency, and we just went into, like, we were working with Steve Southern on Bumper. We partnered up with Steve. We had Glovebox. We had RevUps. We had all these different things we were building when we exited. So we saw the light early in the agency world, that the big agencies were all kind of blending themselves together into one thing, and the whole retainer model was changing. So we turned into a software incubator, and we always went into all this shit not knowing like some of what we were doing. Like Barry's like a big blue sky thinker, and I'm more of like, how do we execute it? And it was kind of a fun place to be, because even our developers said most of the time when we came to the table with these ideas and these big ideas that we were doing, like most of our developers have said, we never built this. So we had this kind of long body of work for 16, 17 years of a lot of things that no one had ever built before. Like we were building like 3D shit, like with like classes, like on screens, and like for parts and service campaigns, and just doing different ways of animating things, and working with different teams around the world. Like we worked with MSN Messenger teams in Hong Kong in the early days, and we were the first Canadian. There was 2 North American agencies, a Canadian and a US agency, that was on the Facebook development platform, and we were one when it was still the Facebook. So there was all of this sort of early days body of work stuff that like no one knows about us. But when you sort of dig back and go, oh shit, we did this and this and this, I sometimes forget how much work was behind us, but how much of it was like brand new to everybody.
Yeah.
Right. Like working on the Facebook development platform in the early days, like we'd be tying it into a Hellman's mayonnaise site or a Dove body thing, or, Vaseline intensive care thing. And then like the developers at Facebook would change shit that night, like email us in the morning, like, hey, we just changed this on the platform. But all like 7 weeks of work would crash because of it. Right. Because we were, because it was the early days. So like we didn't know what we didn't know. And we were doing like animation work on like MSN Messenger. And so it's kind of cool to look back at all of that, because now there's this whole new world of, as you and I talk about in our conversations, just how much AI is now spilling into it. It's kind of always been around, but now it's more tactile. Like we're touching it more, right?
It's got a lot of money and a lot of momentum behind it, for sure. And
Indeed.
before we get into the AI stuff, I mean, just the resume that you talked about there, I mean, it's incredible the amount of experience that you've been through, right? And what kind of I see as shaping your approach to marketing is just going in and doing the work, right? You're trying all these different things, as you explained back when it was the Facebook, before Sean Parker recommended to drop the, it was all these things kind of culminating between all these different projects that you were working on, different skill sets of people that you had collected over time, and then just all the clients that you were able to serve in the Toyota, Nissan space as the OEM, or even the
Hmm.
dealerships that are asking for your service. So, I mean, getting FaceTime with you, I'm sure it's not an easy thing. So I again, I appreciate the time that you've given us here for my silly little podcast. But
No, dude, like I'll blow some smoke up your ass. I love talking to my friends. Like I love the people I get to collaborate with, and I know that we met last year at the hackathon, and we've talked a bunch since. It's an interesting time, and it's a good time to just stop the work during the day every once in a while and just get on a call with a friend or a colleague and knock around some thinking or something you're working on, just to kind of pass it back and forth. So this kind of doing your silly little podcast, it's not silly at all. It's just another point where you and I get to spend some time together and go, how would we sort something out? Or what what are we both collectively doing that can be shared with an audience who may then take a bit of that information and go explore something on their own?
building value for whoever might be listening at that time. That's,
Yeah.
yeah, that's always how I've approached it is, you and I, I'm sure have, many Zoom calls every day, every week, but
Mm.
how many of them are recorded that gets released out to the public that are for mass consumption that someone might actually go, that's a pretty good idea. I think I'll try that. Right. So that's,
Yeah.
that's,
Not
that's
not
always been
many,
the
right?
approach with these. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, just one more question on your background there and your experience, right? Longevity has been your cornerstone in trying new and interesting things. Now we kind of get into the conversation of AI, artificial intelligence. I mean, what was your first memorable experience or maybe a turning point where you go, you know what? I think this AI is something I'm going to start going in that direction.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting because there's a couple of things that were moments where I raised my eyebrows and went, "That's really cool how that's working and what it's doing." And it's even free me going, "I want to touch it." Right? Like that's cool. Give me some of that to use. The very first thing that I kind of would see in action working that I thought was badass was co-schedule. And I've mentioned like it's one of those things. I have nothing to do with co-schedule. I just think they're smart. They used to be a social media advertising agency a long, long time ago, and they did the same thing. They took their acumen and they put it into a tool for social media scheduling. Still a
Okay.
product today. But in the early days, and they've thrown so much really cool AI at their platform to date, like with Mia and all these other things that they've added to it. But in the very early days of CoSchedule, was you could go in, you could tie in your channels, and then it's machine learning would watch your posts and the engagement and the click rates, like the things that all the channels do for you. But then it would start to recommend through their read queue, a tool called read queue on their platform would go, here's your most highest performing things. And at the click of a button, it would go, you could send those out and send them into a scheduled evergreen, like a scheduled evergreen strategy.
Yeah.
And you could say, I don't, you know what I mean? And you could select the criteria of it, but basically it's telling you all the time at the click of a button, it's just repurposing your content on your behalf. And
Interesting.
all you had to do was approve it. And being a busy marketer and working on strategy and working for dealers and different things we were doing, man, it's just like a tool like that to save that much time in the day to just keep loading up your engine with that. So I always thought that was super, super cool. Even and also too back then, because I was always looking at tools to be efficient in my day,
Right.
not necessarily to be creative. It was like I love strategic linear process, as you know. We talked about this last year at the hackathon.
Mhm.
WordStream, when it used to do paid search work, right? WordStream was this platform. It's completely different now, but in its infancy, it did Google ads, Facebook ads, search ads, and things like that. And even WordStream had a weekly 20-minute review where its machine learning was going, do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? And you just said yes, no, yes, no. And it would rebuild ads, rewrite ads, like here's a rewrite we think you should do. So it was giving the work, like their tool. And because I think they sold to someone and that's why the whole thing went to shit, but not went to shit. They're just doing something different.
Different. Yeah.
But WordStream was cool that way because all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute. Like in 20 minutes, I'm doing maybe an entire day's worth of paid search optimization.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy, right? So the early days of seeing platforms that could make my, you know, advertising work, marketing work easier, that was really cool. And then just a few years ago, I think right around the time that we came out of the pandemic and had the first NADA after the pandemic, Bill Playford and I, and Barry, my old partner, we were part of something where we were mixing robotic process automation with back-end AI learning models. It was more of an automation play to do the same thing. Like, how can we bespoke services to a dealer group or a dealership, or to do specific things for them? And it was very, at the time, this was right before all this shit came out. It was right before all the open AI. It's just not that we were doing the same thing. It was very different because robotic process automation is clearly different. But what's happening now is AI showing you how to build robotic process automation. Like, the AI is in front, the robotic process automation is in the back. Because if you use it the right way, you're building to the process automation.
Right.
The way I use it, back what we were doing was we just had it the other way around, where AI was just watching what was happening and learning from what was being built. So, that's when I started to kind of really get my hands dirty. And then, we're at this point now where they've given us the tools to monkey around with now, and toss around and build stuff with. So it's reminiscent of, again, I mentioned Playford. We were just on a call the other day, and we were talking about, again, aging myself, but when the internet first started, there were no browsers. There was no search shit. Like, you were just in there, like, finding stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
as a joke, we all just wanted to find, like, the crazy, scary, titillating stuff that 20-year-old nerds want to find. But the early days of the internet were just like, it was a black box, right? It was just like, okay, how do I find this? And in a way, that opening screen of ChatGPT is just, okay, talk to the machine.
It's a black hole. Well, let's talk
It's a
about
black hole, and yeah, all right.
For a powersports dealer, there are a lot of moving parts that have a direct impact on your income. That's why Moto Hunt Premium was developed. Designed specifically for dealers, Moto Hunt Premium allows you to quickly and easily manage your inventory with streamlined pricing data from competitive dealership listings, JD Power Pricing Guide, and National Powersport Auction wholesale prices. Moto Hunt Premium also automatically identifies potential issues with your online listings to help you move your aging inventory and maximize your gross profits. Contact us today to take a test ride of the all-new Moto Hunt Premium and see how we can help your business grow and sell more inventory.
Let's talk about ChatGPT, because you're bringing up some early efficiency tools that helped you with your functions as a marketing strategist. But I think to the rest of the world, 2022, maybe even early 2023 is really when the large language model started hitting the mainstream, and everybody's now talking about it. AI is now a common acronym within our terminology now when we talk about what is the possibility of the big beyond, right? And so I think a lot of people are scared, a lot of people are curious, but I think more importantly, a lot of people were exposed to it in just a few recent years, with ChatGPT being the biggest, most well-known one. What was your initial impression of looking at it? Free, paid, but when did you first take a look at arguably the most successful AI tool, ChatGPT, and what kind of work did you start doing with it in those last maybe year or two?
Well, I will preface it, like you said, 2022. I think it was 2022, before the models came out. I did a session at a digital dealer about automation versus AI. We did it as a dealer debate. Two teams of dealers debated against each other, and I had vendors kind of explain their products, because it was the early days where some we were like, we're powered by AI, we're powered by this, we're powered by this, and most of it was robot. Yeah, it was all bullshit. But it's the way this industry is. It's like, get out in front and slap the new thing onto your product, so you're part of the learning curve. But we did this fun stuff to go, here's what's different about it. So the irony of it is because I did that because I just saw the vendor set going, we're powered by AI, and I wanted dealers to understand the nuances. A lot of things that I do in my sessions or the talks I give is giving people enough information that they can have educated conversations with their vendors or partners that they may need tech from. Right. Yeah. This is what this is. So, the irony of the fact that, like, 2023, we're like, holy cow, there's all these cool tools. Like, the first chat bot was built in 1964 by MIT. Like, it's way back. Like, so there's all the terminology and the look and feel of it and how it was going to work was sort of coined and developed and defined in the 50s. So now we're at 2023, and they're like, here are these new tools, and everyone, these big scary things. But I always kind of back up and go, it's not really scary, because they're just letting us touch it now. Like
Right.
they feel that it's okay for us to touch it now, like en masse,
Hmm.
instead of just being a big. Because for people, it's like it's going to take our jobs, it's going to steal our children, you know, it's gonna develop robot dingoes which will eat our babies. I don't know, right? Like it's just AI is going to enslave us all. But the actual fact is, there's so much human nuance that it'll never ever be able to replicate. So I'm off on a fucking tangent.
That's I think what the mass appeal to a program like ChatGPT was, is that it was so human characteristic in its responses, right? You
Yeah,
mentioned the first chatbot built in the 60s by MIT. I'm sure it gave you a very, let's call it a scientific answer, right?
it
It was
gave you
probably,
numbers, right?
yeah,
That
it
you
was
get fucking
yeah,
shoved into
one
some mainframe somewhere.
exactly, ones and zeros were its answer, where you feel that when you ask ChatGPT a question or give it some type of prompt, that it gives you a
Mm.
response that you almost read it like a human wrote it, right? And that was, I think, kind of the first mass
Yeah, yeah,
appeal where
yeah.
they go, wow, this is the thing now, right?
Yeah. I
So
remember that first. Yeah. I remember in early 2023 where it was like a New York Times reporter or something had that overnight talk with the bot. And I
yep.
think it was Claude, or it was like, I don't know if it was Microsoft's, I don't know if it was Google's, but talked to it all night. And the bot was trying to convince him, like when that was still sort of in what they were giving to the general public. And the bot was trying to get him to leave his wife, right? Because he ran, it's like, and they were like, okay, we got to keep fixing this, right? So it was like this weird thing. But yeah, 2023, when it first popped up, was when I started looking at it. But immediately my brain went to, what do I do during my day that
Right.
I can continue to expedite? It wasn't like, oh, I want to, write me an email or, write this paper or whatever. I started looking at it from what is in my day from a production schedule, what has to be documented, what has to be created, what has to be written. And then I would sit back and go, okay, it's clearly like what I was learning was it's broad, right? It's so dense and it's so deep, and there's just so much out there. And it was before you could, like, I went to an 11-hour. The best thing I did was I went to an 11-hour workshop given by Harvard AI prof here in Toronto with a bunch, like it was a some CEO President's Club. A client of mine was lovely enough to send me to it because he had done it. He's like, you got to go do this, because we'd started kind of pushing some things around together.
Yeah.
That was where like the lights went on when Ari like walked us through, this is how you prompt engineer. Like prompt should be 450 words, like simple, the detailed. Like we built the GPT, we connected Zap. Like over the course of the day, we were connecting Zapier to it. We were building APIs, like in the course of a day. But it was very much, he was holding our hand and go, don't touch a button, just paste this into the prompt window, shift enter, don't do anything else, right? Because we were kind of spending this 11 hours like doing all this stuff. And that's where the aha moment for me went on. And after that, I was firmly in like, how can this write a brief better? How can this put together a production schedule? How can I make task lists for the email campaign or the video production or whatever it was we had to do from a content standpoint with my little team or friends that I'd work with on client work? Like I wanted it in the early days. I was kind of frustrated with it because I still wanted it to do more. I
Yep.
couldn't care less about making pictures with it. And I still kind of couldn't care less about making pictures with it. But I was really interested in how much of my intel can I stuff into it. And as ChatGPT opened up, people like yourself, people like Eric Milch, people like Rains, like we all started going like, this is what I stuffed into this part of my account. This is
Yep.
what I added in here. This is a GPT I built. And I started to play with it where I would do things like I wrote a paper. I was in a certification, and I wrote a paper where I audibly recorded I used Otter, and I recorded myself, interviewed myself, going through the criteria of answers we had to give on this paper. So I recorded the whole thing in Otter, and then I took that transcription out and I fed it into the bot, and then wrote probably 1,000-word prompt of what I needed it to do and how it had to write it, and how it had to do it. And then I took it out of that. So it did that very quickly over the course, maybe probably a couple of hours by the time I got it where I wanted it. But
Right.
then I could spend a day on the paper, finessing it and writing it and grammar checking it and putting my citations into it and seeing if I could get citations out of the engine and things like that. And I got it. So I actually handed in, like, because the schools were like, fuck, man, people are going to be sending in all these shitty papers, and they are. But
Yep.
I wanted to see that if I gave it exactly, like, I don't want you to deviate from the answers I gave you. I don't want you to add your own textual things into it. I don't want you to improve this. I just want you to take this. And here's a dozen blogs I've written and a dozen articles I've written for different publications and things, and take that, grab my tone of voice. I shoved so much into it. that I got it out, and I got like a 96 or something on this paper, but half of it was
Wow.
generated using AI. However, it was jammed full of my words and feelings and
I think
intel.
I think that's what makes these types of chat GPTs and large language models to help you with your efficiency in your work really shine, is not letting it do it for you, but almost kind of constructing a foundation that you build upon, right? Which
Yeah,
is no different from asking for help from a mentor or an expert and to go, hey, would you help
right.
me kind of start this thing? And then you obviously finish it. That's how I kind of see a lot of those programs. Let's shift gears, Brent,
All right.
into the dealership side of things, right? So
Okay.
dealership Fixit, right? We're always trying to
Yeah.
provide value, and I bring on experts like you to kind of talk about these subjects to really where the dealership can kind of use them. So let's kind of shift into more or less the
Sure.
conversation that we can have with dealerships and go, how can they get involved in this, right? As you know, working with dealerships and me working with dealerships for so long, these are busy guys, right? And they're often, running three businesses at the same time with inventory sales, and you've got parts and accessories, and then you've got service, which is a whole nother animal. And so people are kind of relegated to their own departments and their own ways about doing business within that. But you have a broad marketing, you have a specific marketing for department, you have campaigns that are going on. And just even stepping out of the marketing side, how do you write, how do you write policies and procedures? How do you
Right.
maybe
Right.
maybe walk us through a couple of practical AI applications that maybe some tools you can even mention as well. We're not getting sponsored by any of them. This is all free
Yeah.
game, right?
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
what are you currently using? What are dealerships currently using that you're seeing, or what are some things that you can suggest to them that they can use and take back to their own dealerships?
I think and that's such a great question because um, the vendor pool is supplying all the necessary day-to-day business platforms, right? Like you've got lead retrievals, you've got DMSs, you got CDPs, you got all the junk, right? CRMs and everything else. And and the companies are trying to stuff the right kinds of AI into those to make some of those things a little bit more efficient, a little bit more automated, a little bit more templated. And that's a good thing. But the question you're asking about what are you using inside the day to actually build your own pieces?
Yep.
I think that, and you can use a chat GPT for this. Like that's where I started using some things because I would make GPTs. But let's start with the easy one because I know the best. Let's just start with the marketing department.
Let's do it.
The marketing department is either relying internally, like if it's a group and they have the luxury of having an internal team that is organizing most of their work inside, or maybe they're managing outside vendors as well for different bigger pieces. Um, I would recommend to those teams in powersports or in automotive, like use a chat GPT and go out and research how to write a creative brief, right? Because the thing that is normally asked of these teams is stakeholders come down, general managers, dealer principals, group owners, we need X. We need this kind of campaign. We need this. You can take those quick asks, interview style, and you can stuff that information into a chat GPT. Let's just use that one as for an example and go, I need a creative brief or a strategic brief based on this. The KPIs that stakeholders want are XYZ, right? Like, because you get those things like we need a campaign. We want to focus on these vehicles or these kind of bikes, or these kind of ATVs. This is the results we're hoping to get. Here's the intel of what we know. And if you stuff just enough of that into like a chat GPT, what I like to do with that, because I'm always about the process through to the end of the execution, is I can take that from a stakeholder. So Jacob, if you're my boss and you go, Brent, I need this stuff, I would shove that into a chat GPT and I would build a strategic or a creative brief about that campaign. And I would bring it back to you, Jacob, and go, this is what you asked for. Can you review it? Are we missing anything? And you go, that's great. Now you have a foundational doc, which no matter, like if you're halfway to the goal line of getting this campaign to market and someone from another store goes, hey, wait a minute, aren't we going to talk about this? It's like, stakeholders, you've all signed off on this brief, so keep moving. So it's a quick way of developing something that most people don't write. So by using LLMs to create briefing documentation, then once you have that, you can say, now that we have this, can you help me develop a production schedule around these asks that are in this time frame? Keep the work off weekends, do that. Now all of a sudden that marketing agency's got a brief, they've got a production schedule, and depending on what they want to build, they can use a paid version of ChatGPT with Dolly attached to it and do some heavy briefing. You've got your OEM ad hubs. Don't use AI to build shit when you've got these amazing libraries of like amazing photography, like like you've got things that are already there. but now you can use it to go, what can we write with it? And I think a lot of marketing teams get that part of it. Like, what kind of social post copy can we write?
Right.
But what sort of email campaigns can we write? How can we now take this campaign, now that we built all this, is there a way to evergreen this into an ebook? What's a white paper? Is there statistics around one of these vehicles or one of these bikes that we can turn into like a one-page stat sheet? There's lots of ways to use the tools to do the documentation work, the research work, like the boring shit. Not the fancy, Sean and I made that burning garbage can on fire last week or whatever. Like that's the fun stuff.
Yeah.
But this is the stuff that I love because I can plan a campaign using tools. And I'll give you a tool that I'm using right now that is so badass. But I'm using tools to research, cite things, find things, read transcriptions, pull stuff in, take old content. Like I'm using it for all of the planning stuff and the documenting of things, because that's where most marketing teams get kind of shut down. If you're in a different department, let's say you're in HR, like you were saying about different documents. Mm-hmm. Let's say the group hasn't updated the HR documents in 5 or 6 years. You can use AI tools to now go out and say, give it like, we need to be this compliant. There are these new laws, right? If you prompt the tools enough, AI can actually go out on it for an HR director and at least get him or her. AI tools can get you the structure and the boilerplates of all the new updated documents an HR director would need. I say that because you don't want to use those as final, but in 30 minutes of prompting and sending out a bot to research or whatever, you can probably get a lot of work that then you can spend 6 hours with finessing.
Yeah.
But an HR director will tell you, back in the good old days of no AI, that could be a 6-month writing process.
Absolutely.
To do it, review it, send it to legal, do all this. But the fact that you can get the bulky work done so fast, it gives you all of this new time to finesse the work. That's where I always say you got to humanize your AI. So HR, use it to rebuild all your documentation. Have it go out and make sure that you've got tell it where to go, read these laws, go to your state or federal government websites or whatever, pull all that information, and I need to rewrite all these documents. It's right there. So we talk marketing, we talk HR. The parts people can dig in and use things like ChatGPT just for if you have multiple CSVs that you need to consolidate. Let's be honest, like most parts departments or whatever can be kind of a mess. I wish back in the early days of doing dealer websites, because we had powersports stores, that powersports inventory feeds were a mess.
Yep.
So imagine now, and they're, I can imagine they're miles cleaner, but you could probably do some serious damage with using document assessment, analytical assessment of a lot of your mess, and have AI clean it up.
Okay.
Right. So I'm kind of thinking department to department here, because there's lots of great software out there. You've got a bot out there talking to customers on the website and all that other good stuff. You've got AI in your CRM that's doing all of this, but there's day-to-day things where someone may write. I'll give you a perfect example. We helped a client write a lead nurture campaign, and Abby on my team, who's this really brilliant strategist and copywriter, historically, and I'll give you the platform, we're using Taskade, and Taskade, and it's badass because it's built on OpenAI's LLM, but it is this it's got everything in it that like a project management team, a marketing team would need. It's one of these tools that it's so powerful, and you can see everything it can do, that the first couple of days you use it, you'll lie awake at night staring at the ceiling, because it makes you realize how much this can do. So Abby using and it's full of pre-built agents that you can then just build a knowledge base into. So she fed all this stuff into that she's done in the past, and she usually would by hand build a lead nurture campaign for a client, and it would all the copy, all the structure, all the triggers, all of the shit. She said, by hand, it's a 6-month production process to do it properly, and then drop it into something like HubSpot.
Yeah.
She had the structure and the build and the copy and everything done in 90 minutes.
That's incredible. So Taskade
Taskade is my, and the gentleman, and I'll give him a shout out because you can connect with him on LinkedIn. They post a ton about their tools, but it's Taskade, and the founder of it is a gentleman by the name of John Z, XIC, XIE. Apologies, John, for butchering your last name. XIE. He's a founder, but it's just kind of, for someone like me, it's the perfect thing, because as it, like you said, in the departments, there may be specific things that a parts manager wants to do, or there's someone in HR, or there's someone in the controller office that wants to do something. And there are these tools out there. You just kind of got to pick through them, and kind of stumbling onto Taskade for me was, this is doing everything I was trying to get ChatGPT to do, which couldn't do it. And I was trying to connect ChatGPT to Zapier and then do this. And and I even was working with this kid in Nigeria who was like a Zapier pro. And I'm like, okay, Nathan, let's get it to do this. And we couldn't make it happen. And then Taskade shows up out of nowhere, and it's doing all the things. I'm like, make me a production schedule, make me tasks for these people on my team. Like, it's just the amount of agent AI that you can build a team of agents and just have them go work. You go research, then you write it, then you design it, then you do this, then you do this, and it's all actually in its own. You've got all these bots just on their own building things. We're I would say we're still early days with it, but what you're talking about, what I'm talking about is, from any department in a dealership, I always say to people, write down all of the daily, repetitive, laborious tasks you have to do where you're doing it manually over and over and over again, but it's useful for what you do, and it's beneficial for the running of that department. Mm-hmm. I always take, and I did the same thing. I'm just like, what are all the things that I want to do all the time, but I want to do them faster? And I made my list. And by the time I stumbled, so I got Taskade, I got Gamma, I got ChatGPT, I got V, I got Revoicer. Now I have this tech stack based on my list of things that I want to do. So regardless of department, and I don't mean to say this to be vague, but I would recommend to any department in powersports and automotive, be whatever your position is, there's a tool out there for something on your list of things that, man, if I could do this quicker and just spend more time finessing what spits out, there's tools out there. There's voiceover tools, there's video tools, there's inventory tools. Like inventory, I mean, like there's just data analysis tools, right? Like if you, like for a controller, they've just got to they got to go back, and like all of a sudden, like you're walking into a dealership whose books are just a mess. AI is a perfect tool to like go, here's 2004's books. Here's all the CSV files. Can you make just one solidified report of what happened? You know what I mean? Like you can prompt it to get there. So every department can either go back into things, clean things up, make things more streamlined. So that way, talking interdepartmentally or as a whole, you can get to the things you need to talk about. The most important things.
Let me ask you on your perspective of that. So clearly you just went over all of the pros, right? In multiple departments.
Yeah.
I mean, the parts guys can add CSVs, service guys can use it, the marketing team, the GM, HR, brilliant. I love it.
You can throw parts images at like Canva, right? Clean them up or right? Like, there's all kinds, like, because the parts images are hot garbage. So you can take those and, strip them out, bring them into whatever you need to bring them into and make them better, right? So from a parts and standpoint, there's graphical things you can do too. So anyways, I'll shut up now.
So all those are huge efficiency, time, and energy savers for the average individual at a dealership. And I agree 100% with all those. You should be exploring ways to do your job quicker, faster, better, right? But I have to play devil's advocate and ask your personal opinion on this stuff. We don't really have any laws or guardrails regarding what type of information we're feeding, let's say ChatGPT these days. So what is the potential ramifications of an HR manager putting in what some might be considered personal or sensitive data into a program just so that you can have it spit out an answer of what to do about a certain policy?
But that's a different, like if I,
I guess I'm asking how should dealers be careful about that stuff?
Yeah. The example I was making was, like, for instance, with HR is, if I was rebuilding documents, I would go to state websites and federal websites only. Like, that, like to get new info, like to feed a bot. Like if I was going to make
let me rephrase
to get
that,
like property. Yeah. Cause you're saying like,
let's take out the HR. Let's take out the HR
Okay.
part of it. And let's say you gave an example of cleaning up our books, right? So maybe there's some transactional data that has customer names on it, and say, hey, ChatGPT, please clean this up for me so I can do a campaign later. I mean, what I'm just talking about, like feeding it business information that you wouldn't otherwise share with anybody else, but now you're giving it willingly to this, software program on your desktop to say, give me some answers back about my own business data, right? What are some potentials and some guardrails that dealers should be aware of before they go down some of these roads, if any?
Well, I think, yeah, and that's a great question, because I think if you're going to use it, like, let's say, talk about the controller example, right? So a controller goes into something, and that dealer principal, or a dealer principal buys a new store, and the store's like a hot mess, right? So the dealer principal goes to the controller, like, help me clean this up. So the controller has to then now look at the platforms which don't hold data, right? Like, it's kind of a Pandora's box in a way. And I mentioned this because I was watching the Ashley Madison documentary, where they were like, because that's out of Toronto, right? We used to walk by the offices, and they were like, no, all your data's secure, like all of this shit's secure. But you have to remember that these new platforms are owned by the Microsofts of the world, by the Googles of the world. So we already understand how they handle or protect data. I think if you're doing something like that, or not, right? Like, here, like, I don't use Meta's AI tool, like, fuck that, right? But I think it's the due diligence, like anything. Let's put it this way, Jacob. When privacy laws change in your state or in your country, you have to go about educating yourself on what is what. I think if you are handling sensitive data using AI tools, you have to do the due diligence of really understanding, and you can probably reach out to those companies and go, if we are doing this on the platform, what sort of features, what is cached, what is kept, what is not, because again, you have to be sensitive about what you put up there. The difference is right now, if you dump something, like if you go, here's an invite to, like, here's a spreadsheet of friends and family I'm inviting to my wife's surprise birthday party. Help me write a thing for it, customize it, right? Do the variables, like, help me plan for, like, help me do the catering. This is how many people are coming here, their names. I want to, do something, whatever. If you put that spreadsheet up there, OpenAI is not going to build a website out of it and go, here's Jacob's wife's surprise party list, right? Because it's the old thing of, like, once it's on the internet, it's on the internet, which is a great question about AI is, once it's in AI, is it in their data banks, or is it just one-to-one? So no matter what you're using it for, especially if it's sensitive data, don't listen to me on my hot take of, yeah, just do it, right? Or don't do it. Take the time to understand how it holds the data, how it doesn't. Because when it comes to executing on that, using it to help you streamline something, because that dealer principal and that controller are going, like, we're looking at 9 months of just cleaning this up while we have a business to run. And so there's a it's cost prohibitive, there's all this other stuff. But if there's something that can securely just take that data, give it back to you, and it's gone out of its memory banks. Because, like I said, like, I know OpenAI was doing something, right, where there's memory pieces and there's not memory pieces, but it's only applied to you in your account. So I think for anyone that's in a leadership role, managerial role, that is thinking about using something where fiscal or personal information is going to go into it, you gotta go in there on your own and make your own decision on that. Like, don't listen to me. I'm just like a dumb punk from Toronto. Like, what do I know?
I agree with you. I'm a motorcycle dirtbag, right? So I don't know any better than the business owner would, and that's on them. What makes it
But
an
I'll
interesting
read, but personally, I'll read up on, like, how they hold it. Like, remember when they started saying, oh, they're going to have this, like, memory component in the tools, and I would read up, like, okay, I want to go read up about that. Like, go listen to podcasts with people like the Sam Altmans of the world. Like, don't go listen to Elon Musk and his bullshit. Like him or don't like him, but he's a bigger picture guy. But you get, like, someone like a Sam Altman on, like, a podcast with Ezra Klein or something, where Sam is digging into specific questions on that.
Yep.
Like, that's a person you want to listen to. Those are articles you want to read. That's documentation about things that you want to dig into. Not your hot take, not my hot take, not Elon's hot take, not Taylor Swift's hot take. Like, doesn't matter. Like, go and read like, go and actually find the documentation from that company or that tool you're going to use, and actually read it. Like, don't just click terms and conditions, accept, and go to town.
I think that's what most people do, but I agree with you. I mean, there's a level of a Wild West mentality to AI right now that kind of feels like 20 years ago or longer with the .com era, right? It's like this whole thing is now growing into this three-headed monster, and I think that's where we're kind of at with AI. We're not really sure what to guard, what to even legislate on yet, because it's so new and we're just still trying to get our arms around it, but it's still outpacing anything that we've done prior.
Right.
So,
and you think about how long it took to legislate different things on the internet.
Years. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know.
Well,
I just think, like, read, like, take the time to, like, that's where you if AI is doing all this fast work for you, you've got actually more time to actually go and read the terms and conditions.
Yep.
Like, what a concept. Like, maybe that's the shift where AI is making certain things so easy, it actually gives you time to read the terms and conditions, which now with the tools, I found that I crawl through those terms and conditions. For instance, I've just been invited into Canva's AI lab. So they're putting new tools into their platform, but there's a group of us that are in there now using them.
Okay.
But we had to sign agreements because we can't talk about what we're fucking around with, right? But I read the terms and conditions on being a part of this lab front to back 4 days ago when I got it, right? So I'm finding that because of that question, I'm going in and actually crawling through, like, what can I do? What can I not do? Like, I can tell you I'm in this Canva lab. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I thought you were going to
And
say
I was like,
that,
what happens if I tell somebody, right?
I thought you were going to say, I put the terms and condition in ChatGPT just to summarize it for me in a sentence or two.
No. That's where I just leave that stuff alone, because you could take, if you don't understand something, you could take an excerpt out and go, okay, what does this mean in plain English? But
Yeah.
it was their terms and conditions on this lab were pretty straightforward. But I wanted to know, because when we do things like hackathons, when we do other things, and Canva knows this of me. They know I do things like hackathons, and they know I like sharing platform information for other people, going, look at this tool and go do this. But I know right now with that, until they kind of open it up, that's when we can go, because I'm not going to tell people, like, go find this thing that's not available to them yet though either. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, one last question on the practical use cases for dealerships, right? So just to kind of rattle off, we mentioned several of them, but here's kind of the list that I grabbed. So we talked about ChatGPT, we talked about Task Aid, Gamma, Midjourney. You mentioned Canva.
Oh, I got one more.
Zapier. Well, that's what I was going to say. Is what is one that maybe we didn't mention in this conversation that's maybe
The
a little
coolest,
underutilized?
yeah. There's a cool one, and I was talking to Dane Seville on his podcast. There's a tool out there, and there's tools for everything, but there's this documentation tool called Guide, Guidde. And what I've said to clients, and I've said to friends or people, it's a great tool to go on your screen, do a screen capture of something that you do. Like, let's say Jacob, you're onboarding 3 new people as part of your company to do the marketing work you do. But there's a bunch of platforms you need to go, this is how we use the platform to do X. You can just do the screen grab and not talk, and it will write all the instructions based on what you did on screen. And then you can mount that as a video, and you can download it as a PDF. So what I like about Guide is, if you're a vendor and you've got performance managers, account managers that serve your clients, and the client's like, hey, how do I do this in the CRM again? You could build all of these out in Guide and just mount, like, the matter in which you can create a whole new account service library for someone to go to this link. Here's the video on how to automate that template into an email. Here's how to, automatically resize image. Like, hey, marketing team, you're brand new. Here's how we use the resize tool in Canva. And you just do the walkthrough on screen, and Guide takes it and documents it as a video and as a downloadable thing. So now you've got documentation from a video standpoint that they can go watch, but here's the step-by-step.
Nice.
And they're on both. So Guide, for any organization, any vendor, I think is badass. And again,
what about for dealers?
Same thing, right? Like, if you've got staff that, of course, you're going to go in and you're going to go train all day on CRM, and you're going to go do this, but think about all the things that are just unique to your dealership, and things that you do for your customers, the way you interact with each other. Like, what are things that you have to either log into, understand how to unlock? You could go, if it's on a computer in something that you do, that you need a new employee to understand and learn, because maybe you have workarounds in a system that, some vendors trained you on, and you're like, I can do it in 6 less steps than they trained me. Then I would put that into Guide and go, this is how we use this piece of software. This is how we use this. And now you have your own documentation that all you have to do is record yourself while you're using it, and it's going to write your copy. You don't have to voice, if you want, you can talk over it, but it'll give you a voiceover if you want. But it'll just, like, the fact that it writes the steps out for you, it's just another manual thing of you. Because how many times have you sent it going, just log into here, click on this, do this, right? Or you send an email with, like, the screens in it. It's time, right?
I love it. I love it. Well,
Yeah.
that's a
So
piece of gold there
guide's a
for.
cool one for dealerships. Yeah. For dealerships, for just plain on onboarding documentation, examples of like faster ways of using existing pieces of technology in the store, whatever it is, like guides kind of badass for that.
Nice. Well, there you go, dealers. All right, I need to get to the hackathon with you. We only got a few more minutes, and I want to make sure that we cover this year's AI Hackathon, a Digital Dealer 24, October 8th, 1 to 4 p.m., MGM Grand. You got to be there or be square. So let's just dive into last year, because last year was kind of the first AI Hackathon. I was lucky enough to participate in it with our good friend Sean Rains. He was my captain. Although our team did not win. It was very eye-opening. And so I appreciate you inviting me back this year, and I get to be a captain. So I'm a little nervous about that, but can you just kind of run down what this year's AI Hackathon is about? Who's going to be there? Just kind of give us some broad examples of it, and then maybe what someone could expect if they go and attend.
Yeah. So what I say to everyone is the AI Hackathon is an educational collaborative event. There is not someone on stage during the whole time this is going on talking at the audience about what you can do, like we are here. Like what we're doing is what some people do in front of an audience. Here's all the things you can use. Now get out of here and go sweat it out on your own. Like, you know, the 1,000-yard stare as you fly home from the conference going, I don't even know where to start. The hackathon is a place for people who've never touched AI tools but want to learn about them and start to use them. It's a place for people who feel they're like mid to advanced users that want to go and see what else, how other people are using it. And what we do is we put all of these people on these blended teams of like new people, seasoned people, with the captains like yourself and other marketers. And the captains are really lovely this year. What's cool about it is most of the captains are either returning from last year or people like yourself who are participants last year. Right. So we evolve, and there's a lot of people that continue to talk after last year's event anyways who are on teams. But at the hackathon, we will give the teams, and it's a 3-hour event. Like this is a closed door 3-hour event from 1 to 4 on the first day of Digital Dealer. So this is a very, very unique thing where the teams will jump into some educational prompt engineering as a group. We've got some really cool things, as you know from our meetings. We've got some hands-on, like before we even jump into the hackathon, we're going to do some learning as a group. So some of the captains are going to just share some like things that we're sharing now, but you're going to actually physically do it. The teams then are going to get an ask from me, and they have to use nothing but AI tools and their brains and, you know, pencil and paper, whatever they want to do to plot, produce, and present the ask I deliver. Okay. So I'm not going to tell you what the ask is. You know what the ask is already, but I don't want to spoil it. But it basically is going to be from the spirit of request for pitch, request for proposal. The teams will be given a very specific ask. They will all develop the same thing, but in the nuance of their team's voice and their team's art direction and their team's approach to it. They will have around 90 minutes to produce everything. So they'll work as a team to get all of their assets and all their presentation together. Goobagoo has been kind enough to sponsor it. So I think Mike, a couple people from Goobagoo and myself will judge, so that while that's going on, we will be going around and evaluating based on tools used, collaboration, flow of work. And then there's the back end of the hackathon is presentations. So all the teams have to send people up to present their work. So each team has, after doing all of this, they have 4 whole minutes. So basically we're taking a hackathon that happens over 2 or 3 days and we're condensing it to 3 hours. But then they go up, each team goes up and presents to me, the client, how they would approach the problem or the ask that I've thrown out there. So that's how the hackathon works. So as you can see, it's all hands-on. Everyone who's watching this or sees it, if you're going to come to this, bring your laptop because the tables are like powered up. Goobagoo's got like refreshments, going to keep everybody hydrated. We got power and internet in there. It's special just for this event. And then one of the things, the thing about it is, it's just a really cool event because we do share a lot of knowledge. And on that team, as you know, Jacob, like the teams kind of talk for an extended amount of time post-event about different prompts, and you learn new, like the captains will bring in their own sort of like we're doing here, like what are tools you like, what are tools we can share. We have a lot of time for people to really jump into things. And what was kind of funny last year was the credit cards were out because people were like buying the $20 a month ChatGPT accounts or subscriptions because you can build a tech stack super cheap with this stuff. Like it's not expensive. So it's a really fun afternoon for that. We're going to add a wrinkle. Like I said, one of the things I did in New York had a completely different industry for a hackathon. We're going to do a steel timeout. So each team will be designated a table they can go to and steal ideas or prompts or ideas. And really what it is it's just another place for someone to go up to you, Jacob, and go, hey, I'm kind of stuck here. Is there someone at your table who can show me what they did? So
Yeah.
it is a steal, but really it's just extending the collaboration of how are you doing something? Can you show me that? So that's what I love about it is it's something where you're going to go to a conference and you're not just going to put your ass in a chair, stare at the front while someone points at like an Excel spreadsheet, or you're going to go to an AI session where, they're going to scare the pants off you about what you're not doing enough of, but they're
Right.
not going to help you really dive in. Don't get me wrong on that. I think at these shows, it's super important to make sure that you find the educational events you want to go to. Like, what are the tracks that you really want to go to? But I always encourage dealers, like, part of what we're doing about talking about tech is go visit vendors in the expo who are talking AI and ask them questions, right? Like, go actually learn about what they're building. Don't be afraid that, they're gonna want me to sign and they're gonna want to do this. Like, give them some time, because half of what I don't think we do a good enough job of is there's a surprising number of people who aren't touching the platforms at all on both sides, on the event, like just from a regular, not their own products. Like you said, at the dealership, there's not enough people really touching these tools as much as we think they are. You're right. The nerds are using it. You and I are using it. But when you really start diving in, and everybody I talk to in different companies and different dealers, and like, we're not touching it, we're not using it. And this is vendors too, right? There's a lot of vendors out there that I'm not using it. So I want this to spur more conversation, and vendors are invited to this. If the dealers fill up the RSVP before the vendors do, then dealers come first. But dealers, when you are at a show like this too, go talk to some of those companies that are saying we're AI this, if you're really diving in, and get that intel from them. Like, talk to the person who built it, not just to the salespeople are great, but ask the salespeople, is there anybody here from the build team, the tech team that built it? It's like, I'm curious about how I need something to be compliant this way. So if you're avoiding the expo at a show and not talking to teams that are actually building this stuff too on the regular for your business, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice as well. So the hackathon though is really that, like, let's just roll up our sleeves, let's just throw shit around, let's build stuff. It's like Dave Grohl said, right? Let your kids go buy crappy instruments at a yard sale. Let them go in the garage and make shitty music, and eventually they're going to come out with something cool. Like, it's the same thing. Like, let's just get a bunch of tools open. Let's delegate the work out there, and it's up to you, the teams, to determine what it is that you feel is your best foot forward. So that's the secret sauce.
I'm excited.
So sign up, come to the show, man. It's going to be badass. Yeah, I always freak out. I think I told you this. I always freak out because I think it's going to be like a flaming hot mess. And every time I've done it, and I've done a whole bunch of these now, we just pick up one more piece of knowledge, how to make it better, how to work it better, how to run it a little better. And I'm just so grateful to you and my other friends that give of your time, because you're so geeked out about learning these things and sharing what you've learned. That's what makes it kind of really extra special. So thanks, dude.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, knowledge is the greatest gift anybody can give or receive. So, I mean, last year was, like I said, super eye-opening. And just to kind of quickly paint some context, what last year's model was the purpose was to come up with I think it was a quarterly
Vehicle
campaign
launch.
for a
Yeah.
vehicle launch. And the amount of AI that was coming from every angle, left and right, from different tables, was like, man, I never heard of that one, or I didn't get to try that one. So you got a little taste of everything. But ultimately, the end result of what Eric, the championship belt winner, did last year, and he's the guy to knock off the pedestal this year. But we had to come up with email campaigns, social campaigns. There was a video component to it, an image component to it, a website landing page build. I mean, in 90 minutes, I think it was 90 minutes last year, what we were
Like,
able
this is
to
short
build,
compared to what we did last year. Yeah.
I mean, it was just amazing that what would otherwise take somebody, or even a team for that matter, weeks to build traditionally, it took us 90 minutes, and some of it was kind of sloppy and there was some holes in it. But I mean, the bones were there, and you go, wow, this is really possible to do it in one afternoon with a collective of strangers who are all working on one goal. It was quite amazing. And I know this year is going to be even more amazing.
I think we just keep blowing it out. And what's really nice about shows like Digital Dealer and the team at Emerald, and there's other events that I've done it at up here in Canada and things like that, is I think, to your point, what comes out of it is, as a group, we kind of have a lot of fun. And I think what we're seeing too is in our captains meetings we're inside that month now. So a couple of captains are like, man, like, I'm super stoked about this going on. And it's kind of, this is the first time, because we have so much quality time to get together on this. And like we said, there's only 90 spots, right? There's only 90 spots to be in this room.
Yeah.
And just the fact that, there's people like, oh yeah, we'd like to sponsor it, and just kind of add little nuances, like just the fact that, we've got someone who goes like, yeah, we want to make sure there's some prizes for the team. Like, I'm designing this belt is even better than last year's belt. But there's just a lot of nice collaboration from the vendor pool, from the dealer side of it. And yeah, I'm going to be thoroughly exhausted by the end of it. And I'm just exhausted watching you guys all pound away at this stuff with your teams. But I think for the dealers and the vendors who want to learn, like I have a friend who is a CEO of a company on the vendor side, and he went last year and he said, like, I learned so much. And I think that is the truest statement about how little people are using it, because we think everyone's touching this stuff, and the reality is they're not. But
I don't think
we can't just use the tools that are provided to us by our vendor set without actually understanding how this stuff kind of works when we apply some of it to our very own, like, little bits of work. We all have to, the dealerships out there, the powersports dealerships have to have that front facing environment that's run by a lot of AI. And how awesome is that? But I think by learning the tools that you can use will help you understand how the vendor's tools will also build out. It'll give you a better indication of how maybe you can use those even better, right? Like a vendor like yourself could have a really cool tool for lead assessment and different things. But if you've got a super user or someone who's really digging into their own AI work and playing with it, like they can go, man, I could take Jacob's tool and do this with it, right? Like, I think that's why it's important to talk to your vendors at expos, learn how their tools work, take things like this, go do workshops, take tutorials, right? Go do things online. There's so much information on this stuff that you can spend a couple hours a week on, like commit that time, learn a ton.
Absolutely. It's understanding how the sausage is made, right?
Gross.
Well, I think that's all of our time. So a couple quick things before we end here.
Yeah.
We're talking to Brent Wees. He's the master of marketing. He's putting on the AI Hackathon. It's October 8th. If you're not going to Digital Dealer, I'm definitely a proponent. I've been going for years now, and I always find value out of it. Yes, you have to travel to Vegas, bummer. Yes, you have to stay at the casino, bummer. And there's always a little bit of something going on after hours. There's probably a karaoke party or some dinners, or there's just some good
always stuff going on.
Some people. But if you're there, make sure that you sign up for Brent's AI Hackathon. How can people get a hold of you? How can they get the link to sign up, Brent?
I will, Jacob, I will give you the link so you can post it in the show notes or in the post notes, like to the sign up. So look for that. If you're watching this, like, look in Jacob's comments, he'll post it there. If you want to talk to me, best place is hit me up on LinkedIn, BRENTWEES. You can find me there and just send me a connection. Like, if you've watched it or whatever, you have questions, like, hit me up. It's kind of neat when you start talking about this stuff on a public forum like that, because I'm talking to a founder of an image platform over, I think, in Poland. I think he's in Poland. Is like, hey, like, we just built this thing. So you start having conversations with people and they go, hey, go try my stuff. So as users, like, why it pays to geek out on technology if you have to use it for your job, regardless of what it is, you're going to start to talk to different people, potentially from around the world, on how this stuff works. And how lovely is that?
Yeah.
So yeah, LinkedIn. But sorry, I'm just
okay. So LinkedIn.
Spun out. Yeah, link. LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and then I'll hit you up.
Okay, cool. We've got you on LinkedIn. We'll have the link in the show notes. And for anybody who has the availability to join, definitely let's try to be a part of it. Join my team. There's a lot of great captains out there, so I'm going to need a lot of help. And so if you're coming, let us know. Hit us up. Leave us a comment, like, subscribe, all that stuff. But in the end, Brent, thank you so much for the hour that you've given us. Any last departing words?
Go Bills.
Go Bills. We are in football season. Well, I'm going to counter that and say go Cardinals, even though I know there's not a chance.
I think we just beat you. I think
you did.
I think we just took care of that. But no, thanks, Jacob. Thanks for having me on. And like I said, there's so much information out there, and people sharing prompts, how to write prompts, how to do things. So don't be afraid to go out and look for information. My partner, Lisa, will attest to this, is that, if you just do some searching, some researching, you find some good things about prompting, citation, whatever it is, like, you can start throwing some things at these tools and have those aha moments. And it's super cool. So don't be afraid to jump into the deep end, because like I said last year at the hackathon, like, you can't mess this stuff up. You're just working in an environment that's giving you information that you can then apply to something else. It's not like it's going right into your database at your place of business and burning everything to the ground. Like, go make a mess, go break stuff, go build someone with 6 arms and 4 heads. Like, just go mess with this stuff and get used to using it, because it's remarkably fun to when it starts to really give you what you're looking for. It's really, really exciting.
I think on that note, we can wrap it up here. So put in the work is what Brent says. Go try it out.
Put it.
Well, Brent, thank you again for your time today, and bye, everybody.
See ya.
If you're a motorcycle and powersports dealer, you already know the biggest marketplace websites are clunky, slow, and riddled with ads. Even if you pay big bucks to list your inventory, your competitors can pay even more to outrank you. That's why we created MotoHunt. Our site is famously streamlined and quick, with no extra nonsense to confuse buyers or dealers. That's why we rank so high in search results without having to spend millions in advertising. Why pay 3 times as much? At MotoHunt, one low price covers everything a dealer needs to get their inventory listed and collecting leads fast, with no multi-level pricing tiers and no way for your competition to out-premium you. No matter how many listings or leads you generate, your subscription price is the same. Click the link to find out how MotoHunt can help you start generating more leads today.